Chapter 10. Here, Nick. Adam fell into sleep so deep that it was like going down into a well like a bucket. He heard none of the sounds made by the other people in the room. Some of them snored, some tossed and turned in their beds. One of them got up early. He did not hear that one snap his fingers at Nick, nor hear Nick come out obligingly from under the bed, stretching first his legs and then his neck, and finishing with a yawn that shook him to the toes. He did not even stir when a strong hand clasped Nick around the muzzle to silence him, and a strong arm scooped him up in one swift motion. After that there was nothing to hear but the tiptoeing footsteps of the man, and there are always footsteps in an inn. When at length Adam stirred and opened his eyes, the sun was coming through the little windows, and in every bed one or two people were sitting up and yawning and stretching. Adam sat up too, and rubbed his eyes with his knuckles, and stretched his arms as far as they would go, until suddenly he was wide awake. He saw Roger sitting on the side of the bed, looking troubled. "Son," said Roger, and that alarmed Adam, because Roger called him son only when his feelings were deeply stirred. "I am afraid the dog is gone." "Nick?" Fear struck at Adam's heart, but his mind refused to accept it. He wouldn't run away. He hung over the side of the bed till his top knot grazed the floor, and the blood thumped in his ears, and looked under the bed, under the whole row of beds. Shoes were there, worn and scuffed and curling at the toes, and lying on their sides, but no Nick. Adam pulled himself up again. "Nick! Here, Nick!" he called. His face had turned white, and every freckle stood out. His gray eyes were nearly black. "Nick!" The other people in the room began to take an interest. They looked on the floor under their beds, or shook their heads and said, "Tick, tick," or suggested that Nick had gone outdoors. One of them said to Roger in a low voice, "That fellow's gone, the other minstrel." Adam scrambled into his hose and shoes and hustled on his surcoat, leaving his harp and belt and wallet for his father to gather up. He rushed out of doors. "Nick!" he called. "Nick!" After the rain, all the leafy world was washed and sparkling. There were chickens in the road and ducks waddling in a solemn row to the river. "Here, Nick!" cried Adam. Even as he called, he knew that it was useless. Nick would not have gone away unless he had been taken. He heard a cart grinding and grating along the road, and soon saw its nail-studded wheels kicking up great dollops of mud. He ran to meet it. "Good morrow, sir," he cried. "Have you seen a red spaniel?" The carter was an old man with white hair and white whiskers around his chin. He stopped and looked at Adam with quizzical blue eyes. "Now, young sir," he said slowly, "I have seen a red spaniel, many a red spaniel in my time, but not today, nor yet yesterday. Have you lost one?" Adam did not wait for the rest of this useless speech, but ran back to the inn, where various well-meaning people were darting about whistling shrilly, as if, thought Adam scornfully, Nick would come for them instead of me. In the kitchen he found Roger and the inn-wife and the maids all gathered round a stable-boy, who hung his head and shuffled his feet and muttered sullenly in answer to half a dozen questions, all noisily shouted at once. "Here," said Roger, "this is serving no purpose. Leave the boy to me, and he will tell me what I need to know." With one arm over Adam's shoulder and with the other kindly but firmly on the back of the stable-boy's neck, he led them both out into the stable-yard. Adam, looking up at his father's face, saw there was a grim determination that somewhat comforted him. When they were out of earshot of the crowd gaping in the kitchen door, they stopped. "Now," said Roger, "there's nothing to be afraid of. Just tell me what happened." "He came out before sun-up," said the boy, stuttering a little. "The other minstrel, that was. He had the dog under his arm, and he said he'd made a trade with you, the dog for the war-horse, and then he went." "Which way did he go?" "Over the bridge and up the track toward Ranmore Common. The horse is in the stable. I didn't do nothing, sir." The innkeeper and the others edged out of the kitchen and across the yard in time to hear the end of this. They all had their comments to make, the gist of which was that a war-horse, even a lame one, was a good exchange for a red spaniel any day. "You made a shrewd bargain there, minstrel," said the merchant. He was a smooth, prosperous-looking man with round little red cheeks above a curly beard. He wore rich clothes, and his hands were soft and plump like little pink pigs. Adam looked at him in rage. "There's no war-horse in the world that's half as good as Nick," he cried, and stopped. Bayard was a good horse. They had missed him sorely. Could Roger— He clutched his father's arm. "You didn't—" he began breathlessly. "No, Adam, no." Adam looked deep into Roger's true grey eyes, and knew that never in the world would he have secretly traded Nick for any horse. For a moment Adam felt overcome with shame at having harbored such a thought. Then he forgot it as the realization of Nick stole and flooded his soul with anguish. "Come on," he cried. "Come on, we've got to hurry. Maybe we can catch up with him." "Who's going to pay for the horse?" said the innkeeper. "A penny a day for fodder will cost, and he ought to have a poultice on his leg." Every minute Jenkin was taking Nick farther along the road. Adam looked down at his shadow, which stretched thin and black over the straw-strewn muck of the farmyard and bent up the side of the stable. It was a long shadow still, but every minute was shortening it, and Jenkin had started before there were any shadows at all. Bayard whinnied, and Roger, with Adam protesting at his heels, went to look at him. The horse was lame, there was no doubt of that, too lame to move. Adam tugged at Roger's sleeve. "Oh, come on," he implored. "We can come back for Bayard. Let's go get Nick now." And they had the reckoning to pay, and an endless deal of advice it seemed to receive. They were off at last, with packets of bread and cheese and cold meat in their wallets. Across the stone bridge they went, and up the steep slope of Ranmore Common, along the old track under the brow of the hill that the people of England had been using for centuries and centuries. Long before the Romans came, the Britons had brought their ingots of tin from Cornwall in the west over this high road to the eastern harbours. They called it a highway because it ran high along the chalk ridge that stretched across southern England. Now it was the Pilgrim's Way from Winchester to Canterbury. This morning it was full of sky and sun and wind. As Adam and Roger crushed the little grey leaves of the thyme under their feet, the sun shone on the bruised leaves and brought out their fragrance, and the warm wind spread it far and wide. Below them stretched the Weald, that low-lying clayey land grown over with thick forests of oak, and away at the southern horizon's edge was the blue line of hills called the South Downs, and beyond them a misty silver streak that Roger said was the sea. Now and then, as they hurried along the ancient track, they passed into the shade of yew trees. Adam strained his eyes ahead along the road, looking always for a wiry figure and a little dog. He strained his body too, hurrying always and breathing hard. Nick, his thoughts went over and over. Nick. We've got to hurry. We've got to catch up with him. They met a shepherd. "Have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" cried Adam. No, the shepherd had seen neither minstrel nor dog. They met a pardoner with the pilgrim's badges sewn all over his cap and coat, and bag of pardons hanging on his back. "Have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" asked Adam. In the same moment the pardoner began to talk about the wares which he had to sell, pardons from Rome, pay a few pence and buy a pardon for your sins. "Jenkin should have one of those," said Adam grimly. "Who is he? Where is he?" asked the pardoner. "That's what I'd like to know," said Adam. "He's got my dog. Have you seen a little red spaniel?" But the pardoner cared nothing for little red spaniels. He went on his way. "Sit down and rest," said Roger, after a while. "You'll save some time in the end." They had crossed Ranmore Common and came out on the white downs. Ahead of them the track stretched in broken white lines where the underlying chalk showed through the turf. Adam flung himself down on the ground and buried his hot face in the fresh grass. All within him was turmoil. His thoughts and feelings buzzed like angry bees, and like bees they stung him hotly. Roger sat beside him. "Never fear," he said consolingly. "We'll get him back." Adam rolled over and sat up, unconscious of his face streaked with dust and tears. Where has he gone, do you think? Why hasn't anybody seen him? Look, there's a church tower down there in the trees. There must be a village. Maybe he's there. He'd only have to come back to the Pilgrim's Way. There's no road through the Weald. Most likely he's going to Guildford, over yonder. He gestured with his hands, but Adam saw nothing but the round-topped downs tumbling over one another against the sky. While he gazed, a knot of figures far in the distance slowly detached itself from the background and began to grow steadily larger. Adam soon saw that there were 12 or more men and women on horseback. "Pilgrims," said Roger. "We'll ask them. Pilgrims always see everything." He stood up as they drew near, and so did Adam. The first two were jolly and substantial-looking townsfolk, and behind them were 2 countrymen. "God save this merry company," said Roger politely. "Sir, God save you," replied the nearest pilgrim. Adam stepped forward. "Have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" he asked, and his eagerness caught in his throat and almost choked him. "We have a pack of minstrels followed on our heels. Look for yourself, boy." Adam ran to the end of the cavalcade, where he did indeed see 3 or 4 minstrels of the poorer sort, and 3 dogs. One was a greyhound, and one was a very fat, very old brown and white spaniel, and one was a little thin, scrawny creature with a tail bigger than he was. One of the minstrels winked at Adam and jerked his head backward. "On your way, boy," he said. "We need no more harpers here. These worthy pilgrims have no soul for music." "Have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" interrupted Adam. "And what pennies they part with for tales shall go to us," finished the minstrel calmly. "You mean Jenkin of Chester." "With a dog at the end of a leash," put in another. "And wings on his feet," added a third, "and never a civil word in his mouth." "Yes," cried Adam, "that's the one. Where did you meet him?" "Near St. Martha's Chapel an hour or more ago. We chaffed him about his dog." "That's my dog!" cried Adam, in such a heart-broken voice that at once all the minstrels lost their jesting air, and the hindermost of the pilgrims reined in his horse and came back. They were all so full of sympathy and so eager to know just what had happened that Adam had difficulty in getting them to answer his questions. "He was 2 years old," he answered impatiently. "Please, where is he going?" "Yes, Jenkin took him while I was sleeping at the inn last night. Please, which road was he taking?" "It was the inn at Bureford Bridge." "Please, did he say where he was going?" Then Roger came up and settled it. "We're for Guildford, for in a hurry," he said briskly. "Farewell, friends. Have a good day." He clapped Adam on the shoulder, and they strode off. "I got it from the wife of the first pilgrim," said Roger. "They met Jenkin where the road divides, and he asked the shortest way to Guildford. She noticed the dog. He was so soft and shiny, she said, and friendly." "That was Nick all right," said Adam, half proudly, half sadly. "Jenkin will sleep tonight at Guildford," Roger went on. "We're sure to find him there." It sounded very definite. Even the names of the places along the way gave Adam confidence. They would find Nick again. Of course they would. He stepped out stoutly.